that out to casual employees, though, do you?
Indeed, you do.
You do.
You do, but only once every 12 months if they go away and they come back. But the idea
they're not entitled to 4 weeks paid annual leave.
That's correct, but the statement itself is meant to be given to casual employees because they are entitled to other benefits that are listed in the annuals.
Same bad word, but I've got some non-speaking casuals that will read that and say, I've got to get annual leave.
Yeah,
like,
I know.
Then they're going to come back to you and going to explain to them, well, you're casual.
Indeed they will. I wish I could make it go away, but I can't, and that you're not alone in that frustration because there's almost a sense that we give all of this information out without proper caveats or proper explanation around it, and all it does is create more questions for you that you then have to answer.
So that I should still do a contract agreement when they start for a casual employee.
Absolutely.
Even though you said their contract ends at 5:30 on a Thursday.
Absolutely, you should have a written contract. And that's because it must be very clear as well, particularly for casuals, it's very important that you identify in that document what their base hourly rate of pay is and what the casual loading is that you're paying on top of it. Because, for example, what many employers do is they say, well, you're a casual and I'm going to pay you $20 per hour, right? But it doesn't break down what the base rate is and what the casual loading is. And if I was a Fair Work inspector and I came into your workplace, what I would say to you is, well, you're paying $20 per hour, that's the base rate. You need to be paying 25% casual loading on top of that base rate. How have you paid that? And you'll say, no, it includes it. And then they'll say, well, where is that indicated? Where on the payslip is that indicated? So you also have obligations under the Fair Work Act in relation to time and wages records and payslips. And again, there are financial penalties for not complying with those. All of your time and wages records and all of your payslips must have the mandatory minimum information that the Act specifically states must be included on each of those documents.
So it's got to be broken up with the normal standard rate, then added the 20% on the different.
I believe your time and wages records, and again I'm speaking at the top of my head here, I believe the time and wages records need to be more comprehensive than the pay slips, I can say that for sure.
Yeah.
And I believe the time and wages records need to indicate what the base rate is and what the casual loading is to that staff member. I don't know if the pay slips need to, I think you check that. But you certainly should have clear in your mind what the base rate is and what the casual loading is that you're paying on top of.
But then do we still have to give weeks' notice to casual employees too? Yeah.
No, if they're a true casual, true casual, again, their shift ends at the end of an employment period, so they end at the end of the shift. But what's important to note about casuals, and we see this increasingly at the Tribunal of Fair Work Australia, is if you, let's say you have a casual and they're not particularly working out very well because you have a dislike about some aspect of it. Or let's say the casual employee says to you one day, I don't particularly like you as my manager. Yeah? So that's what they just say to you in passing. All right? I don't particularly like the way you manage me. And that's it. And then you go home and you think about it and you go, actually, I don't really want to work with that person anymore. Like, I'm running this business. I don't want to be hopping flat from my staff in my business. I'm not going to cross with them anymore. So all of a sudden they don't get any more hours. Well, sure, as a casual, their contract ended. But now they can bring a claim against you of adverse action. Because they'll say, well, my employment didn't end for a lawful reason. It didn't end because there were no more hours to give me or for any of these things. You ended my contract. You stopped putting me onto the schedule because you didn't like that I made that comment to you.
But I have a work. Prove that?
But it's up to you to disprove it. They don't have to prove anything. How do you disprove it? The best way of doing it would be to make sure that you document your reason why, and by document I mean by way of even a simple email to yourself, some sort of record as to why you made those sorts of decisions. And the same goes when you're hiring. And if you're hiring a new employee, remember that employees in Australia are protected from discrimination even before you hire them. So if someone makes an application and you don't offer them an interview because, for example, you don't like their name, right? Maybe you look at the name and you think, I can't pronounce that. I'm not going to interview that person for this job, right? And that's the reason that you apply to it. That's a discriminatory reason. And it's protected. The employee is protected from discrimination. So they can bring a claim against you even before they've spoken to you. All right? So again, the way that you would correct that and make sure, first of all, hopefully you would avoid that because you like to try and avoid discrimination wherever you can. But the key thing is, if you're making a decision to interview someone, that you keep a record of why you made that decision. So maybe they didn't have the experience that you particularly were looking for. You should make a note of that. Or maybe their CV didn't address the particular selection criteria that you said everyone must, respond to. So that would also be a valid reason. And at law, we call this contemporaneous note-taking. So writing down a record, keeping a brief note of why you did and said certain things. Even an employee interaction. So if an employee says to you, I don't particularly like your management style, you might want to keep a note. Just a quick email to yourself, today this comment was made, this was my response to that comment, file, right? And those contemporaneous notes are very important because if you end up at the tribunal, one of the greatest things you can do to put into evidence in your favour is contemporaneous notes because it demonstrates that at the time you were thinking about the consequences of your action and recording. It's a very, very powerful thing.
I do a lot of